Cara, today's episode is going to cover a skill and a topic at which neither of us is particularly adept.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
And if you ask members of our family, they might say that not particularly adept is a far too gentle way of describing how challenged we are on this particular skill.
Again, no idea what you're talking about. Is that because the topic of this episode is shutting up?
Correct.
But I want to frame it.
Here we go. Glass half full.
No, actually, I'm coming at it from half empty today. Here's the deal with our conversation about shutting up. It's not just about the power of being quiet when you know the right answer and you know the fastest, easiest way through for someone else in your life. It doesn't even have to be a child, turns out. No, that's not just what it's about. What it's about is contextualized by all of the press right now around parental stress. And I think that's an important place to put this conversation, to seed it, because it would be one thing to just do an episode about the power of being quiet and letting your kids speak. And we can do that. We could totally do that. But I think it's ever more helpful to put it in the moment, which is that the Surgeon General just came out with essentially an advisory saying parenting is stressful and it's pushing parents to the limit. And this is not a surprise to anyone. You and I have talked a lot about being part of the cacophony of parenting and not wanting to be part of the noise and only wanting to be part of solutions. So that's where we should start, is solution-based framing for the stress around parenting. And it begins with what I'm going to do right now, which is shutting up.
So for those of you with your shoulders around your ears, or maybe in a group chat about the stress you're feeling, because we're actually recording this episode during what for many people is the first week of school. We're here to help you with a deep exhale. And this is one of a bunch of episodes we're going to do that are really specific and really aimed at helping take a load off. And whether that is what today's episode is about, which is zipping it, and future topics, which are just to turn the volume down with all of the stress. And by the way, as we've said about teens and we've said about kids, some stress is good and some stress is healthy. And when you are working to be in a family and meet lots of people's needs while hopefully meeting your own needs, yes, there will be stress and it won't be smooth and it will be hard. And that's okay. But when it starts to impact our wellness, our partner's wellness, our kids' wellness, that's when it's not so good. And so, Cara, let's start with framing the concept of shutting up. Because when we were on our book tour and people asked us, they would always end the call, the interview, the whatever it was with
300 person stadium seating arena. I guess that's 300,000 person, but go on.
Yes. Yeah. Not, although probably if we added up, I wonder how many people we spoke to on our book tour, but inevitably people would ask, can you please distill your advice down? And the first piece of advice was...
Yeah, I mean, the way they would say it is pick your favorite piece of advice, right? Like, give us one thing to do.
Right.
The thing.
So parents would say, give us one thing to do. Journalists would say, if you could tell parents one thing, what would it be? And in this case, we would often say, and there were two pieces of advice. One was what we're going to cover today, which is listen more, lecture less, or as Cara would often say, zip it, which is great because it's both like hilarious, mildly aggressive, but also there's no profanity, which I always respected and appreciated. And the other piece of advice, which we will cover, we've covered in the past, and I think we will cover again, which is messing up and the importance of taking do-overs. And we have an episode on taking do-overs, but I think there's another episode to be done on this topic.
Okay, so I took a walk with a friend of mine this past weekend. Her name is Julia. Hi, Julia. So Julia and I took a walk, and she has a middle schooler and a grammar schooler who is like middle school cusp, almost there, but not quite. And we were talking and talking and talking. And she looked at me and she said, I just need, give me the piece of advice I need that will make me have the relationship with my kids that I want. And that relationship is open and communicative, and like they tell me their stuff and they take my advice. And when I was done laughing, we had a good laugh together. When I was done laughing, I said, actually, it's totally achievable. And I said, here's what I think. And I said, zip it. And she said, I don't understand. First, she said, I can't, which is, I understand.
You're
and
like, come sit by me.
Right. Come sit by me. And I said, no. Let me explain. I said, everything that we do, everywhere we go, everyone we talk to, everything we write about boils down to being in conversation with your kid. Everything points to that being the right answer. It's not always easy conversation. And the conversation doesn't always end with like holding hands, singing Kumbaya and hugging each other. But being in conversation is key. And what I've learned is that being in conversation actually means you don't say very much at all. That's the golden ticket. Because if you are doing a lot of the talking, you are in lecture, you are in monologue, you are in whatever mode you want to be in, problem solving tactician, right? And you're trying to solve their problem. And we all see where that goes. That goes nowhere. So if you need evidence of the power of staying quiet, just try not being quiet today. Just try offering up all sorts of thoughts and solutions and suggestions today. And you'll be reminded very, very quickly about what exactly the power of being quiet is. But it's not being silent. And I think that's important for us to help people understand.
Yeah. So what I want to do is walk through a variety of scenarios and help people understand what zipping it actually means in those scenarios. Because again, it's not withholding and it's not silence, but it's also not lecturing, dictating, solving, fixing, in grand manner. It is a much smaller, more powerful role. So let's start, since it is the start of the school year, and one of us may have a freshman in high school who we are working hard, we, the collective we, the human endeavor we, to build certain study skills in anticipation of 4 wonderful, joyous years of high school. So I don't know if anyone else out there is feeling this way, but you look at how your kid sits down to do their first night of homework, and you basically want to throw yourself on the floor and scream and cry and maybe even get in the car and go to Carvel for some ice cream instead of dealing what's in front of you. So Cara, since I'm going to fess up, I am the one, I know you're all shocked to hear this, I am the one dealing with the situation. How would you recommend being not silent, but being a quiet help and support in this circumstance?
So I want to start by seeing the parents, like acknowledging the parents who actually have no idea what the workload is like or that, right? There's a whole world of parents who approach raising kids in a more hands-off, whether it's by choice or by necessity, a more hands-off way. And we're going to get to you. because this is not a value judgment on that. This is for the parents who happen to pass by the space where they're doing the work, or who happen to be at home hearing whatever they're hearing, right? And for those parents, I would say to you, Vanessa, I would say that zipping it means tossing a little softball, a little conversation starter that's not patronizing and that's not as unsubtle as you don't realize. I mean, I always think I'm being so subtle. Never. It's never subtle. But it's tossing a little softball and holding up a mirror. I mean, I think the concept of the mirror is so important in this example. So the mirror in this scenario, a kid, first week of school, chaos everywhere, no organization. I'm just riffing here. It could be, right? Picture the room, picture the mess, picture. One way in is to say, boy, it looks like you've got stuff all over right now, but we know where that's going to go. That's going to go to, this is my organized mess. I know where everything is. Don't judge me. That is not the softball that opens up the conversation, right? The softball that opens up the conversation is the non-yes, no question that sounds something like this. Hey, I'm so glad you're getting into your work. I'd love to know what your strategy here. Like, what's your plan? There is a way to say that it's extraordinarily judgy. Don't do that. Just like, hey, I'm truly curious. As you would say, Vanessa, get curious. Now, if that had been you saying that line, what do you think the response would have been?
I mean, I lived it, which is, so there's certain parameters that were already in place from last year. So for some people listening, you may have, for instance, taken your kid out of the bedroom and into a more public space. In our case, it's the dining room table near our kitchen. You might have also made sure that your kid had done certain things ahead of time, like things like marking folders with the actual name of the class on the folder, changing how they store papers and work, right? So maybe move from binders to notebooks and folders. And that, in itself is a conversation. Hey, what do you think is the best organizational approach this year? It feels like binders didn't work so well last year. Understatement of the century. Maybe folders and notebooks might help. I think getting their buy-in.
I'm good.
Right. So there's no, it's fine. And, the conversations about it's a fresh start, like you're that much older, that much more mature, you can own this process. And then sometimes, and this is, a situation I may find myself in, you have to let them give it a shot and see what happens and get comfortable with the uncertainty of whether things are going to go well or not.
Right. So one path through shutting up or zipping it is to let them give it a try.
Yeah,
for sure. There's a safety gate, right? You have to make sure your internal meter feels like it's safe. But when it comes to something like organization, executive function, homework, it feels like that is a excellent way through, because we know from every single book we have all ever read that if you do everything for them, they don't learn to do it for themselves and they have to fail in order to succeed, blah, 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 right? So, okay, that's one path through. Is there another way that it could look if you weren't quite there? Let's take a slightly different example. Let's take the example of your kid is on a group chat, or whether it's a younger kid who's on text, an older kid who's on a social media thread. Your kid is involved in some sort of group communication and they let you in on it. They tell you, this is what's going on. So-and-so has said this horrible thing about so-and-so, or this is the picture that's being circulated or whatnot. And they are coming to you, and you cannot believe that they are coming to you, because they are coming to you and they are sharing and they're opening up, and it's incredible. Vanessa, what does zipping it look like in that scenario?
So I will say, as an antecedent to the question, if you've allowed your kid to have a device and if you've allowed your kid to enter a group chat, there are certain boundaries, limits, and conversations that should have happened before that. One of those things is what a kid can and can't do, say, or send in a group chat, right? No nudes, no kind of offensive statements about gender, race, religion, any of those things. No sharing stuff that someone sent to you privately, whether it's a nude or just a piece of personal information, right? So, and also that their ability to have a device and be on a group chat is a privilege, not a right. And it's your right to determine whether it's a safe and appropriate environment. Shutting up can happen, but there's groundwork that needs to be laid before one goes quiet. The other
really important. I mean, I think that needs an underline and a highlight and an exclamation point and all that.
You can pull out your highlighters from high school. But the other thing to keep in mind, and this is one that I think is more complex and underlays actually this whole conversation about shutting up, which is being in conversation with your kids about your values, your family's values. And, there's all sorts of wonderful exercises in a bunch of the parenting books that we've read in the past and organizations that help do this. I know Eve Rodsky's book, Fair Play, has a values exercise. And it's really about figuring out what is the mission of your family? What does your family believe in? What are the values? So actually, one of my kids had at college, I don't know, it was an assignment of some sort. And one of the questions was, what are your values? And my son, God bless him, was like, I don't know what my values are right now, but I know what my parents have told me our values are. So I'm going to borrow those for the time being while I figure it out. So being in conversation about values, whether it's honesty, whether it's kindness, whether it's trust, whether it's inclusion, whether it's a religious value that's important to you, whatever it is, that is the other foundation that underlies before you can shut up.
But even being in conversation about values does not mean you are hammering your values into your kids.
Hopefully not.
Right? It means that it's like any other conversation. It's like conversations about sex. It's like anything else. You're having these conversations many, many times over many, many years, and you have to zip it, even on a values-based version. So and so, our family believes in blah. And then you zip it and you wait and you see what their reaction is. And they may say, no, duh. And they may say, actually, I don't agree with that at all. And they may leave the room and they may, right? You could substitute the part of the sentence our family believes in with any other awkward conversation about puberty or anything else. And it's all the same game.
Right. So if we go back to the group chat example, you've had conversations about safe and healthy use of technology, and you've had conversations about the values that you believe your family is, if not, inhabiting, at least pursuing. And then you can say, it sounds like what's happening on this group chat is really complicated for a bunch of reasons. On the one hand, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like people are doing some stuff that's not all that kind. And that's something we talk a lot about. And on the other hand, it seems like you're witnessing some things that might feel kind of uncomfortable to you based on what we talk about in our house. I'm wondering how you're reacting to it, right? So I'm not, in this case, let's say it's a 5th or 6th grader. I'm not just sort of saying, oh God, tell me everything you feel when you witness this complex exchange on this group chat, because I'm deeply concerned about the ethical implications of what you've just seen, right? This is a 5th or 6th grader. So I am setting up some parameters for the conversation. I'm grounding them in previous conversations we have, and then I am inviting them to notice, react, respond in a neutral way. I'm not judging the kids. I'm not vilifying the other kids. I'm not vilifying my kid if they were involved. I am getting interested.
One thing I noticed in that example is in your how not to do it example, you used the word tell. Tell me. It was like, it was sort of an invitation and sort of a demand. In your how to do it well scenario, you're just saying, this is what I'm noticing. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm thinking. You could say in some scenarios, I do this with my kids because bigger kids, bigger problems. I will sometimes say, I'm worried about this thing happening if X, Y, and Z progress. Do I need to worry? Is this a thing? Right. And so just so long as the verb is not a demand for them to open up, because again, like it's human nature. It is adolescent nature, tween and teen nature to prioritize the peer group over parents. It does not mean they don't love us. It does not mean they don't entirely depend on us and value everything we do for them. But their brain is wired to light up when their peers are around in a different way than when we're around. And therefore, when their friends say, tell me, tell me, tell me, that means something really different than when we say it.
And I want to offer up a second option to a parent of a kid who comes to them with something in a group chat, for example, which is you're coming to me with this and you're sharing it with me, which I really appreciate. And it's not something you normally do, which makes me wonder if you're sharing it with me because you kind of want to get it off your chest, or if you're sharing it with me because you're looking for some advice. And before I say something, I'm just wondering which version of that question it is, because I want to be as helpful as I can, but I don't want to assume to know why you're bringing this to me.
Right. It's the Eliza Pressman line. Do you want me to listen or do you want me to give you advice? And it's such a good line. And also there's a third sort of fork in that road, which is, or is this the new normal, which is great because you can come to me with these things you haven't in the past, but I'm thrilled that you're here now. Right. So sort of level setting that it doesn't have to be that they don't come to you. Let's spend a moment or more than a moment on what about when a parent is not around and available? What about parents who are working, who are taking care of other kids, who are out of the home for whatever reason? They live in a different home. They're taking care of other people in their lives, and they're actually not there in the moment when you can witness the text thread or the chaos of the homework, but they're very much there. These are parents, these are primary caretakers who fiercely love their children. If they have less time with their kids, what I find is that if there's parental anxiety in general, there is 2x that parental anxiety for people who are not around as much. It's like they feel like I've got 5 minutes instead of 50 minutes, and I have to make all 5 minutes count in such a meaningful way. And maybe I'm superimposing my own lived experience on it, but that's how it felt. It felt hard and it was guilt-ridden and it was all these things, right? So how in the world do those parents zip it when their time and bandwidth is so limited and they want to be present for their kids? Walk us through it.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it is naming what you just described and acknowledging to a kid, hey, kiddo, like this is a crazy week of work for me. Or, our new family situation means I don't get to see you every night. Or I've got, something big going on and I'm working longer hours or I'm traveling, whatever the circumstances, name it and own it to the kid. Because if we don't, then kids feel like it's mysterious, like things are out of control, like we don't have a handle on it. And so acknowledging it, naming it, and naming that you're not necessarily going to be as available or in touch or have as much time together as well is really critical. So again, lay the groundwork before you can shut your mouth. Once you do that, I think it's a matter of asking the kid, how can I be most helpful? Like we used to have an hour and a half in the evenings together. And now, because of your schedule and my schedule or a new family situation, we don't have that. What are some ways that we can be in communication with each other that feel helpful to you? And what are things that I have done in the past that actually don't feel all that helpful? And I'm thinking, Cara, about how kids manage communicating with caregivers over text, in person, over FaceTime, and what feels good for us as adults versus what doesn't feel so good. So I'll give you a perfect example. Sometimes after, a game or a practice, I'll text my daughter and say, how'd the game go? And she'll say to me, because I'm not going to see her that night, and she'll say to me, can we talk about it when I get home? And then I'm in a place where I'm realizing either A, there's a problem and she doesn't feel like talking about it, or B, she's just exhausted and wants to do it in person, but I don't have the choice to do it in person. So then I have to take another pathway and say, actually, I'm not going to be home tonight. I'm really sorry I won't be there in person. Is it more helpful if you text, or are you someplace where you can't have a phone conversation, or could we talk by phone? Again, I'm putting it in her court. I'm owning that I'm not there in exactly the way I want to be there. And often she'll just say, it's too much for me to text. Everything's fine. I'm okay. It's just too much for me to text. And I'd rather talk about it with dad, or I'd rather talk about it tomorrow or whatever. But there's not the urgency for her. Again, I might feel urgency, but there's not the urgency for her. And so I'm going to follow her lead.
I love that. That's so elevated. It's a great way to do it, because some of us may just go to the dark side immediately, get that text, and then it's not just, oh no, there's something wrong. It's the house is on fire. Oh no, and then the response text, it's really hard to be subtle about that when you're worried. And yet we don't always have to worry. Sometimes it's the feelings we have about not being there that are causing the worry. And actually, they're just tired, or there is something wrong, but they're managing it and they're doing fine.
Right.
And they really do want to just fill us in when it's over.
So let's take the flip side of that, which is we hear from a kid, either they come home from school like a tornado and they are just laying it all on us, or we get a text from them and they're not coming home yet because they have band or theater or sports or whatever. And they tell us something terrible, and I'm putting terrible in quotes because that's their language, something terrible that happened that day, or how awful they feel, or just a horrific 12 hours they've had since they last seen us, or how awfully their math test went, or, insert just a catastrophically bad communication from our kids. Walk us through that, Cara.
So I still am a deep believer in shutting up. In fact, in that scenario, probably more so.
Because what's the instinct? What's our first instinct to do when we hear from a kid?
I like to think I'm the queen of solutions, right? If there was a mountain of solutions, I would have my house on top, and I love problem solving. I love it for myself. I love it for everyone around me. And let's face it. And this is what I said to my friend Julia the other day. We know better. When they come home and something has gone really wrong, 9 times out of 10, we're like, oh, I got this. I know exactly how you can get through, because I lived this too. So I know the thing you do with the teacher and the way, and you meet with them and you do the thing and you get to take the test again. Or I know how friend dynamics work, and I can play this out. I could write it down like a game of chess, and I can play it out exactly. And I know exactly where it's going to end. So I'm going to leapfrog you there. None of that is useful. None of that is useful.
Because
they have to live it and do it, to learn it and to master it. So solution-oriented mom has to take the back seat, right? And in fact, they will say later in life, Once they get through those maximally tricky social dynamics of whether it's middle school or early high school, they will look back, and what they will thank you for are not necessarily the times where you solved it for them, even though they appreciate it. Don't get me wrong. Like, the light lift is helpful. What they thank you for is giving them the tools to do the heavy lifting themselves. And this kind of brings us back to the bigger picture of this conversation. Vanessa, when we wrote This Is So Awkward, right before we sold it, I told you I never wanted to write another parenting book again. I did not want to be part of the mess of screaming voices telling people how to do this, right? It wasn't helpful anymore. And then I zipped it and I listened to all of the reasons that you gave me for why we should do it. Mostly that we're really funny and entertaining and we know how to present information in a way that would amuse people. Oh my God, we know that. We know. We put it out into the world, but not without some reservation that we were going to be adding to anxiety for the parents and other trusted adults who are raising kids. And I think if we've done one thing well in the last year since we put out that book, it's to beat on the drum of there are lots of ways through. We are not here to tell you how to do it. We are here to tell you what the science is. And we are here to light up all the different pathways that land in a good place. And you choose and you do what works for you. But for every one issue, there are about 15 or 20 different ways to get to a really good solution. And it just depends upon understanding what's underlying it, understanding science if science is involved, understanding your own personality, your kid's personality, blah, 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 blah. Right. Okay. When it comes to conversations with kids and attempting to get to a place where you and your kid are in meaningful conversation, where you are having real dialogue, where they are asking your opinion and actually listening to what you have to say, the path to get there is being quiet. That is the learning curve. They need to figure it out a little bit. And when you open up the conversation with them about homework, about chats, about sex, about drugs, about like anything, great stuff, love and joy, anything. When you open up those conversations and then sit quietly and listen and answer and interact and engage, but you just don't do what I'm doing right now, which is like fully monologuing. Right? When you do that and you sit and you listen, how everyone says be present? That's being present. That's what that is. Shutting up is being present. Okay.
It doesn't discount that in your head, there is an internal monologue that is allowing for you to think to yourself, for Christ's sake, this is the 5th time this week this kid has come home with a mega problem and it's never a big deal. And I'm so sick of it. And all I want to do is go watch Love Island, right? You can have that narrative in your head. You can have the narrative in your head that says, this is the 5th time this week this kid has come home with a big problem. And I am really worried. I am concerned that something larger is going on. You can have that narrative in your head. You can have the narrative in your head that says, I think that my kids' friendships are not healthy. And I'm really worried about their relationships. How the hell am I going to help them find new friends when these have been their friends for years and years and years, right? So like any number of those internal monologues are going on. That's normal. That's healthy. In that case, those internal monologues get turned to one of our trusted adults. We tell kids to find trusted adults. We have to find our trusted adults, whether it's a partner, a friend, a therapist, whoever it is. What comes out of our mouths has to communicate to the kid that we can handle what they're throwing at us. Even if we're worried, we need to reassure them. We need to validate them. We can do it with a sense of humor. We don't have to like be completely inauthentic, but we need to give a kid a sense that we can handle the big feelings coming at us.
And that we can get help when we need it. I mean, I think it's completely not just fair, it's utterly important for us to say to a kid, this thing that you're telling me, I don't have the answer. I need help getting the answer. This is what I'm thinking. I think I'm going to ask this type of person or go and look this thing up. But I don't know. You are not saying, and I want people to understand that we are supposed to be all knowing and full of BS. You are saying what we can handle is what is being thrown our way when we sit in silence and let them go. That is the art of zipping it.
Right. So a kid comes home and just vomits up their day, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have anyone to sit with in class. I had an argument with one of my friends in this class. And by the time we got to lunch, it was like terrible. And I was feeling awful. And then I realized that I didn't finish the English homework from the night before. And I felt even worse. And then, right? And your heart is breaking for your kid. And what you want to say to them is, well, why didn't you apologize to your friend about the argument? Or why didn't you ask, your friend from last year if you could join them at the table? Or, did you speak to your teacher that you forgot to do the homework last night because we had a family event, right? Like all of the fixing. And instead, what do you say? And I mean, God bless Lisa D'Amour, who's so much more refined than I am. And she always says, oh, that stinks. I'm really sorry. And if I said that stinks to my kids, they'd laugh in my face because they know what I say is, oh, that really sucks. Whatever's authentic to you, you validate the tsunami that's coming at you. And my kids make fun of me now when I say this because they can say it in their sleep, which is, what would you have done differently? If you could get a do-over tomorrow, would you handle anything differently? Or do you need help role-playing how you might talk to your friend tonight or tomorrow in school to help smooth things over? Or, I'm wondering if we could have organized our evening last night better so that you also had time to get your homework done, right? Again, I'm putting it back on I'm validating them, I'm seeing them, and then I'm putting the solutions back on their plate.
And as they get older, you can even move to, is there something I can do to help? So instead of getting concrete about what you can do, which is actually very important to do when they're on the younger side or when they're so tightly wound that they don't know what they need. But when they are either more mature or pulled together enough that maybe they can figure out what they need, to ask them, is there something I can do that will help?
And I'll give you a perfect example. My second, who many of you have met, Bear, who is self-described more quiet than the rest of our family, in high school, it took him a long time to learn how to self-advocate. And he struggled going up to teachers and explaining that there was an issue or asking a question or addressing, some challenge. And fast forward, first class of college ever, he got confused between two different buildings. And at the end of the day, called me and said, you're going to laugh, but I was late to my very first class ever because I went to the wrong building. He said, but I went up to my teacher, my professor, after class, and I apologized for being late. And I explained what had happened. And the professor said, I so appreciate your saying something, and it happens, and it's confusing, and no problem. And I said to Bear, instead of saying to him, why didn't you Google map it before you went? And why didn't you leave yourself an extra 15 minutes? And how could you possibly be late for your very first class of college, which were all things that were going through my mind at the time? I said, oh my God, could you have imagined 4 years ago that you would have gone up to your professor on the first day of class and acknowledged that you'd messed up and apologized and created an opening for a relationship? And he said, Mom, that's exactly what was going through my head as I walked up to the front of the lecture hall. That it was something I wasn't able to do when I started high school, and it's now something I was able to do when I started college. And so for people listening who are like, oh, my kid is never going to get there, or my kid is never going to take the bait for these conversations, or, my kid doesn't listen to me, or they don't hear me, or I know if I solve it, it'll go better, instead of giving them the chance to sort of mess up and do it on their own. I am proof positive that when you eventually learn to give kids the space to try it on their own, they do find a path down the road. It's not immediate, and sometimes it takes years, but it does eventually happen.
And the people who can just not shut up become podcasters. Bye, Vanessa.
Bye, Car. Thank you so much for listening. You can email us with questions, feedback, or episode requests at podcast@lessawkward.com.
If you want to learn more about what we do to make this whole stage of life less awkward for everyone involved, our parent membership, our school health ed curriculum, our keynote talks, and more are all at lessawkward.com.
And if you want products that make puberty so much more comfortable, visit myumla.com.